Welcome to Cleveland Conversations. I'm your host, Ed Horowitz. If you ask someone where they should go to see great theater, they'll probably mention two cities, New York City on Broadway, and maybe if you're traveling, the West End in London. But what they're missing and what really should be on that list is our own hometown of Cleveland. And one of the reasons Cleveland should be on the list of great theater cities is Karamu House, America's oldest black producing theater located in the heart of Cleveland's Fairfax neighborhood. Today I want to welcome our guest, Tony Sias, the president and CEO of Karamu. Welcome to Cleveland Conversations, Tony.
Great being here with you, Ed.
It's so exciting to talk to you because Karamu is such a jewel here and so important to the theater makeup of Cleveland. We have many great theaters, but you're certainly one of the most important and one of the best. You have a long-running history. You're over 100 years old, right?
Yes, we were founded in 1915.
That's quite a legacy to have. And you have some exciting news with what your theater is doing right now. The Playhouse Square is one of the largest theater organizations in America, and now you're partnering with them. Could you tell us how that came to be?
Well, Karamu House is the first affiliate company of Playhouse Square. What does that mean? That we will continue to produce and create incredible theater at our home at East 89th and Quincy Avenue in Fairfax. But as a part of the collaboration, we'll be creative partners. So in the partnership, Karamu will lead out on the creative vision of our collaboration, and Playhouse Square will be our producing partner. This came as a result of when I got to Karamu House in 2015, I had a vision of Karamu House having an ongoing presence at Playhouse Square, still maintaining its resident home in Fairfax. And when Craig Hassel, the new president and CEO of Playhouse Square, came to the city, we began to have conversations, working together. And as a result of 2 successful years of producing Black Nativity at Playhouse Square in partnership with the Cleveland Playhouse, with the support of Playhouse Square, we realized that this was an incredible opportunity to come together to establish a new vision and an example of how theater organizations and cultural arts organizations can come together to partnership to look at how shared resources and to better serve our community.
That sounds fantastic. So you'll be doing shows that are produced in Playhouse Square, and they'll be producing things there. Where will the shows be taking place?
So our partnership shows will take place at Playhouse Square. Karamu will continue to have our season at our current location, and we're going to build off of our current model of our holiday show, Black Nativity, being produced at Playhouse Square.
Being produced at Playhouse Square.
Yes.
So bigger stage, more opportunities, bigger seats, more revenue for you as well, I would hope?
Well, of course. So our current largest theater seats around 200, and the Allen Theater, where we've produced the show the last 2 years, seats about 480. And we're thinking that we're probably going to be in another theater at Playhouse Square this year, being this December, and in a theater that will seat close to 500 plus.
That sounds great. So and you'll be building on that, and we'll see what happens with that going forward, I suppose.
Yeah, we got a few things cooking. We're just not ready to announce them quite yet.
Sure, that sounds great. So Karamu goes back 100 years, and one of the things that really made it so important in those early years was its colorblind casting, was its opportunities. Started as a settlement house, right, and was able to integrate a lot of different people into the growing population of Cleveland. 1915 at the time, Cleveland was becoming one of the biggest cities in America, right? So it's an important part of the early history of Cleveland that still goes on today.
Yeah, well, being founded in 1915, legend and lore has it that from 1915 to 1917, Karamu House was serving primarily Eastern European immigrants. And our founders, Russell and Rowena Jelliff, were a Jewish couple that had gone to Oberlin College, went to Chicago to study the settlement house movement, got married there, and then returned to Cleveland. And some conversation with Charles Chestnut and other stakeholders decided to found a settlement house. Our original name was the Playhouse Settlement. And then in 1941, through a naming competition, we became Karamu House. But to that point, Karamu House, the story goes that 2 little black boys were on the front porch of Karamu and asked Mrs. Jelliff, could they come in? And that was the beginning of the integration of Karamu House. So a lot of people thought that, the Jelliffs came up with this great idea to have a multicultural theater. They were serving their people primarily. And through the Great Migration, where black people and Jewish people were redlining the same community, they decided not to just serve their people, they decided to serve the people. And that's revolutionary thinking at 1915, 1917, to say let's all work together using the arts being a vehicle for helping people understand how they leave these rural environments into these industrial urban environments and develop as whole people.
Right, and the arts help to do that, right? Cultural organizations like Karamu and others in Cleveland and throughout the country have really helped to facilitate that changeover from you're an immigrant, you're new to a city, how can you become not just a citizen of the area, but like you said, a whole person. And in the early days they had an important dance troupe, right? And even up to this day, you have daycare going on there at Karamu?
No, we got out of the daycare business in 2016. We thought it best to really hone in on what we're best at. Historically, Karamu House was one of the most celebrated daycare centers in the country, but as things changed and as funding priorities changed, we felt it best to then really target our work on performing arts, visual and performing arts once again.
Okay, and so with Karamu being part of this new movement and becoming a place where important plays were being done, there were a lot of really important black playwrights that were involved with Karamu, including the famous Langston Hughes. So can you talk a little bit about that legacy and how important that was to put Karamu on the map, not just in Cleveland, but nationwide?
Well, Langston was a student at Central High School when he first engaged with the Jelliffs and Karamu House. Karamu was originally in the Central neighborhood, I think 38th and Central. If it wasn't 38th, it was 36th and Central. In any event, Langston's parents left Cleveland his senior year and went to Chicago to find work. And the Jelliffs became kind of like his godparents. So many of Langston's earlier works, I'll say throughout his career, were developed and workshopped at Karamu House. And one thing that a lot of people don't know is that the Jelliffs commissioned Langston to write Black Nativity. It's been really exciting learning this history at Karamu House. And you know, this current administration has made it a priority to really dig into our archives. So we found a number of communications from between Langston and Mrs. Jelliff around a capital campaign for then the administration and education wing of the building, which was completed in 1959. So it's really having those receipts around the relationships has really been exciting to discover them.
Right, well, it's not Christmas time yet, but let's talk a little bit more about Black Nativity. This is your historical legacy. This is your most important show. You've been doing it for years and years and years, right? Tell our viewers a little bit more. If they haven't got a chance to see it yet, tell them more about this gospel reinterpretation of the Nativity story that Langston Hughes wrote. And it was commissioned by the Jelliffs for Karamu House, right?
Yes. It is you just said it, it's the nativity story from the Black perspective. One of the things that's really been interesting is that Langston kind of gives you a number of stories from the original, let me say this, he gives you poetic moments that carry the storyline in Act 1. And in Act 2, it's primarily a concert. And he featured music from the day, back in the day. And so it kind of creates its own art. Today, many theater companies choose to insert new contemporary music and new songs and things of that nature. Well, I directed it for the first time, I think 4 years ago. Well, maybe, yeah, in 19, that's 5 years ago. In any event, who's counting? But one of the things we were committed to was going back to the original script and the original songs that Langston had in the show. And what we've done is we've done contemporary arrangements of those songs. And many times we start with the traditional arrangement as spirituals, and then the song evolves over into a more contemporary sound. And I think that then gives a point of entry for not only our elders in the community who enjoy those contemporary sounds, but then for our younger generations to hear something that is so familiar and to see that music kind of merge and evolve is exciting, and it allows us to really further reimagine the show. We use projections to kind of further establish locale. Some are literal and some are then kind of conceptual in terms of location, but it really does help make it a modern story, a contemporary story that everyone can find their point of entry.
And I think people enjoy having those holiday traditions, knowing that they can go back to them year after year, right? And so by bringing this and making it more contemporary, that's making it more lively for people and bringing it up to date, as you said.
Yeah, well, one of the things in my second year in directing the show, the majority of the songs had new arrangements. And we really got feedback from young and old that they missed hearing some of the contemporary spirituals. So in year 3, and well, this year, more importantly, this year being this past production in 23, we really did add more of the traditional arrangements in there. And it created that call and response that is so beautiful in the African and Black experience, to have someone singing and the audience singing along, or there's a narrative or a piece of the song that the lead singer does something and the audience responds. That reciprocating relationship you don't get anyplace else, and it is so special to that particular production and to the Karamu brand.
And as I always like to tell people who don't go to the theater enough, I'm like, you cannot get that experience without being at a live show. There's an emotional feeling there that you're not going to get at a movie, at a TV, some other situation that you might be going to. Live theater is so important that way.
It sure is.
So tell me, we talked about Langston Hughes. Let's talk about some of the other playwrights that you're developing. Karamu has been important in this past season. You've had local playwrights that have been with Cleveland connections, like Lisa Langford, Michael Oatman. How important is that to nurture Cleveland natives or Cleveland connected playwrights in Karamu House, both historically and in the present?
I mean, Langston has set the stage, and these local and who are nationally recognized playwrights such as Lisa Langford and Michael Oatman deserve to be produced. I mean, there's such a wide canon of African American Black works that have not been produced. So it's important for us to give voice to those works, to give full production so that other theaters around the country can see what we're doing, and those shows can have another life outside of Karamu House. And so the Breakfast at the Bookstore, and it happened in Atlanta, were 2 shows on our season. The Breakfast at the Bookstore by Lisa Langford, and it happened in Atlanta by Michael Oatman, were both world premieres. So that's another thing that we're excited to do, is to develop new works at Karamu, especially those of our incredibly talented local playwrights.
So let's talk a little bit about that Cleveland connection, right? Because it happened in Atlanta is the story of some Cleveland natives who go in for their 20th reunion out in Atlanta. So there's a Cleveland connection there with the playwright and with the characters. And it happened in the bookstore takes place in the early 1970s after the Glenville riots. That's taking specifically place in Cleveland itself. Do your audiences who go to the shows, do they like having that Cleveland magnet part of it? Like, I'm here, Karamu is an important part of Cleveland, and now I'm seeing a play that has a Cleveland connection to it.
Well,
really, or is that just happenstance?
Well, it was, as we curate a season, we're very intentional. I think our audiences are as diverse as our city. I think when we think about the Breakfast at the Bookstore, it really does take a piece of Cleveland history and contextualize it for young and old. I think that there's been a lot written about the Glenville uprising, those players some of whom still alive, some are gone. And so it's a reminder that we are part of a living history, and that those stories need to be told, and through the lens of a play, it gives us opportunity to better understand history and its impact. That was exciting about the Breakfast at the Bookstore. It happened in Atlanta. All of the characters in the play actually went to CSU, Cleveland State University, and it's their 20th law school reunion that they're coming back to town for. So one couple lives in town, the other couple is back visiting. So it's really about, as I sit here today, it really is about the success of people matriculating through CSU, having very successful lives as attorneys, and then coming back. It happened in Atlanta, just happens to talk about what they did at the cultural experience called Freaknik in Atlanta, which there's a recent documentary that just came out about that time in American history. And for those of you who don't know, Freaknik was kind of like the summer break for many students who went to HBCUs, not summer break, spring break. So as other colleges and universities run to South Beach, for 10 years, students at HBCUs primarily were going to Atlanta to this iconic experience.
So that's the connection for the play.
Yes.
Interesting. So when we talk about a play like the Breakfast at the Bookstore, right? About the Black Panther movement, about the Black nationalist movement, about Glenville, right? It's hard to, if you're older, you understand that history, you're familiar with it, you know about it, maybe you lived through it, as you said. But for younger audiences, that can be hard to sort of breach and understand, the perspective of that today, especially a movement that was, taking it to the streets, right? Versus today, much of the movement, such as Black Lives Matter, a lot of that is going on using social media to push that forward. So how do you make that connection for people? How do you think audiences look at stories like that? Any kind of stories that are taking place in the past, making that more relevant to the audiences at Karamu?
I think it's how you produce the shows, and it's just a great story because The Breakfast at the Bookstore is about a young woman whose boyfriend, who is 25 years older than she is, she wants to open a bookstore, and he was a Black nationalist. But the interesting part about it is it's about UFOs, and that the UFOs, he went away on a spaceship. And so during the 1970s, that was a huge trend around the country around UFOs. So the story is universal. And so I think what these kinds of stories do, they're brilliant, but they trigger an interest to go deeper in understanding history. And I think that that's the beauty of theater, that I don't have to be there during that period. It has to be a well-crafted story that triggers an interest in learning more about that period. And that there's conversations today of researching about UFOs in addition to that.
Sure. Maybe there'll be more plays like that at Karamu. Let's talk about the difficulties that all arts organizations had after COVID. There was a great pivot. Everyone was trying to put things online to sustain at least some visibility, maybe even some financial support. And so Karamu was in the midst of some transformations before COVID and now continuing now. Tell us how all of that is going. Where do you sort of see the different phases of Karamu and the plans that you had before COVID and now, several years later, where do they stand now?
So in 2017, we started a capital campaign and renovations at Karamu House. We were very excited. In 2018, we finished phase one, which that was a roof on the theater wing of the building and our larger theater, our Cleveland Foundation Jelliff Theater, that was completed. In 2019, we completed the ancillary areas, which was a bookstore, not a bookstore, a gift shop, a portico, box office, gallery, and lounge. We were slated to then start phase 3 renovations in 2020. The pandemic hit. But as everyone was shut down, and at the point that George Floyd was murdered, Karamu, we made the decision that we needed to go on the front line and use theater as a vehicle to not only entertain people, but educate people towards social change. How did we do that? We produced a show called Freedom on Juneteenth, and it dealt with the historical trajectory of Black people in this country. We created our own protocols in terms of COVID safety. This was pre-vaccine. We brought artists into the theater. We sectioned them off. We did a 3-camera shoot, and we produced this show. Our goal was to reach 10,000 people. We reached over 50,000 people in the first 48 hours. Wow. And that was internationally. So people began to be introduced to Karamu and reintroduced to Karamu. And I say the 3-camera shoot is so important because a lot of people were doing Zoom work. And I have no issue with Zoom work. This was a different kind of production. And the quality and the investment we made really made the difference in how we engaged. Shortly after that, being that was an election year, we created something called Freedom After Juneteenth. And we did 3 30-minute episodes. One dealt with policing in the Black community, one dealt with voter registration, and then we dealt with the diverse perspectives of Blacks in terms of politics and views. That was very well received. We continue to then work with cultural arts and organizations, fraternities, sororities to produce, because we had figured out something. So that was a successful time. So we started back phase 3 renovation in 2022. When I tell you supply chain issues are real, they're real. So we were supposed to be done in 2023. We got done in February, and we're in the point of doing our punch list and all that kind of stuff. So we are a year and 13 months behind schedule, which has had a dramatic impact on all the exciting things that are currently happening at Karamu House as we begin to launch phase 4 renovations. We were fortunate to get a challenge grant from the Jack, Joseph, and Morton Mandel Foundation. So for every dollar that's donated, we get a dollar up to $4 million. And so we're excited to have that investment, and our phase 4 campaign is approximately about 9.4 million. So we're excited to get that going, and hopefully our goal is to break ground with that sometime in 2025.
That sounds like a good plan, and moving forward and trying, you have to keep the building functioning. You have to, keep it in good working order. After 100 years in business, you have to. That's an important part. So having that grant money certainly, and that challenge money certainly very important.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm. So for you, Tony, how do you? You've been here for a while, and what's your experience in terms of keeping theater alive for you? What excites you on a day-to-day basis? At least for the theater, right? Besides the challenges of what you have here at Karamu.
What excites me is that theater continues to evolve. Theater continues to have something else to say.
Mm-hmm.
I am excited. As president and CEO, my job is strategy and fundraising. When I get to direct a show, that's when I get excited. When I see artists at work at Karamu that represent the diversity of Cleveland and the industry, that excites me. To be able to partner with other organizations who may be very different from us, but there's an alignment opportunity there, spending the time to build a foundation and lay a foundation, to see how we can work together excites me, because partnership and collaboration moves at the speed of trust. Mm-hmm. And quite often people don't take that time to build that foundation, to go through the process to better understand each other. So that really excites me. And as a practitioner, I like tech. And tech is when you layer all the things
Sure.
in. And a lot of folks don't like the tech process, but I just like to see the magic of the stuff mm-hmm. all coming together.
Sure, and I think in today when young people are, seeing something like the circus is very boring because we have special effects. So having that tech in theater and that sound design, all of that layered in, it's an important part of making it real to a contemporary audience.
Yes, making it real and accessible, and it's that magic because, film and television, that camera controls the mind's eye. But you also have to be very intentional about what's happening when, where on the stage, and sure. lighting, sound, and all of those elements coming together controls the mind's mm-hmm. eye in a very different way, but equally as important.
Right, and the casual theater goer, most theater goers, they're not going to notice all the hard work that you do to set that up. They're just going to see a show and they're going to enjoy it and know that it worked. Where do you see Karamu in, you said 2025, where do you see it 2035? We're not going to be here for the next 100 years, but where do you sort of see Karamu going ahead into the future?
I see Karamu continuing to evolve as a cultural arts mecca, as a national treasure, to continue to produce and create theater, but also in innovative ways serving the community. And I think that that's been one of the cornerstones and pillars of Karamu, that starting as a settlement house, moving into theater, still being connected as it relates to the WPA movement and creating and training and educating. I think that there are some core pillars, education, arts, cultural and visual arts, creating and producing, but also socially relevant as we continue to change as a community, as a region, as a country. We will continue to contribute in that way, and to be able to serve beyond this footprint. I think that that's so important. Mm-hmm. We will always create and produce in Fairfax, mm-hmm. but how do we continue to move the brand mm-hmm. beyond this city, this region, and throughout the country? Because we have a history of traveling the world.
Right.
And so I think coming full circle once again in the brand being global is where I see us in the next 10 years.
I like the big vision. I think that's important. I think I'm always shocked when people say, "Oh, I've never heard of Karamu. I've never been there." You know, it's such an important thing. So having that brand grow and develop, hopefully with that Cleveland Playhouse Square partnership, it'll continue to grow as an affiliate, and I think it'll be. I wish you much success going ahead in the future. So if you have not been out to Karamu, put Black Nativity down as your holiday plans, and look forward to it soon, an announcement on the next season of what will be coming, right? Surprises in store?
Yes, by June you'll hear more.
Okay, so very good. That's it for Cleveland Conversations for today. I want to thank our guest, Tony Sias from Karamu House. We'll see you next time. I'm Ed Horowitz. Bye-bye.